She crossed a border with a hammer in her bag and a child's name in her head. She wasn't running away from something, she was hunting something down. Another woman. A rival, she believed. Someone who had taken the life she wanted. A life with the man she couldn't have. A home she didn't belong in, but that she wanted to destroy. This isn't fiction. This isn't a nightmare. This is the real story, of how two innocent children were murdered, and how their mother woke up from a coma and named the killer. A killer who crossed countries. To settle a score. That only she believed existed. If you want true crime storytelling that goes beyond the headlines, and explores what really drives people to darkness, subscribe to Behind Closed Doors. This is where the truth lives. It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon in Arboga, Sweden on March 17, 2008. Emma Jangestig, 23 years old, was in the bathroom with her two children giving them a bath, Max, 3 years old, and baby Saga, just 1. A single mother, rebuilding her life after a breakup. Strong, devoted, and doing her best to give her children peace. The day started like any other. But it wouldn't end that way. Around 12:30 p.m., a woman showed up at Emma's door. She wasn't expected. She wasn't welcome. And she wasn't a stranger. Her name was Christine Schürrer. A German woman. Blonde, 32. Quiet. Polite. She smiled when Emma opened the door. What happened next remains one of the most cold-blooded, deliberate acts of maternal betrayal the country of Sweden had ever seen. Roughly 2 years before the attack, Christine had dated a man named Nicholas Jangestig, who happened to be Emma's ex-partner and the father of her children. The relationship between Christine and Nicholas hadn't lasted long, just a brief holiday fling that faded quickly. But to Christine, it didn't fade. She fixated. Obsessed. And when she found out that Nicholas had rekindled a friendship with Emma due to co-parenting, she snapped. To Christine, Emma wasn't just a woman. She was the obstacle. The woman who took the life she felt she deserved. And so Christine planned. She left Germany. She took trains. She crossed borders. She arrived in Sweden. Carrying 2 gifts for the children. And a hammer for their mother. When Emma opened her door, Christine didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She didn't flinch. She walked in calmly, claiming to be interested in renting a room. And then, she pulled out the hammer. And she began to strike. Multiple blows to Emma's skull. Each one calculated. Each one designed to kill. But she didn't stop there. She turned to the children. And with the same hammer, she beat little Max and baby Saga. The attack lasted just minutes. But its impact would echo forever. Christine left the scene as calmly as she arrived. Got on a train. And began making her way back across the country. Emma was left unconscious. Bleeding. Barely alive. Her children? Gone. Emma's father was the first to discover the scene. He had come by to check on her. What he found broke him. Inside that small family apartment was horror. 2 innocent children, dead from blunt force trauma. And his daughter, unrecognizable, soaked in blood, but still breathing. The community of Arboga was stunned. A quiet town, known for its peace and simplicity, was suddenly the epicenter of a murder investigation that felt more like something out of a thriller than real life. And then came the miracle. Emma woke up. From her coma. From the edge of death. With her memory intact. And the first thing she did was ask for her children. It was clear that even in her disoriented and traumatized state, her first concern was for Max and Saga. It took some time before she was able to give coherent statements to the police, and that was when she mentioned a name. Christine. Christine Schürrer. Before Emma could speak, suspicion initially fell on the 2 closest men in her life. Police first questioned her current boyfriend at the time, Torgny Hellberg, and even Nicholas Jangestig, the father of her children. In crimes involving family and children, the inner circle is always the first place investigators look. But both men were cleared. There was no forensic evidence, no motive, no timeline that fit. And once Emma woke up and named Christine, everything shifted. Swedish police moved fast. They traced Christine's movements. Border crossings, train tickets, hostel stays. They discovered she had traveled to Arboga under a false name, checked into a hostel, and asked suspicious questions about Emma's address in the days before the attack. Even more chilling, they found a second hammer, used, in Christine's backpack. Why two? No one knows. Maybe she feared the first one would break. Maybe she planned to use both. And she did because forensics experts confirmed that two hammers were used based on the distinct wound patterns found on the victims. Psychologists would later say Christine showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder. That she lacked empathy. That she viewed the children not as lives, but as extensions of the woman she hated. Christine was arrested in southern Sweden. No resistance. No confession. She didn't deny visiting Emma. She just denied the rest. She smiled. She cooperated. She gave calculated answers. And then she went quiet. The evidence against Christine was building. But there was a problem. There were no fingerprints on both hammers. No DNA on the gifts she brought the children. No witnesses saw her attack Emma. All they had was Emma's word. But what happens when a mother rises from a coma to accuse someone, and that someone insists they're innocent? What happens when the person you believe did it won't even admit they were there? And what happens when the justice system has to choose between a mother's memory and a killer's mask? To the public, the case seemed clear. Christine Schürrer had the motive, the means, and the opportunity. But for investigators, the challenge was evidence. There was no blood on Christine's clothes. No forensic trail leading from the scene to her. The hammers had no fingerprints. The gifts she brought? Wiped clean. It was as though she had vanished into the story, like a ghost with a passport. But ghosts don't plan. Ghosts don't check into hostels under aliases. And ghosts don't carry backup hammers. The prosecution moved forward with what they had: circumstantial evidence, Emma's direct testimony, and Christine's own contradictions. Emma sat in court just months after awakening from a coma. Her face carried the trauma. Her voice, fragile. But her memory? Unshakable. She told the court about opening the door. The familiar face. The sudden pain. And how she watched Christine lift the hammer again and again. She told them about Max's cries. Saga's helplessness. Her own fading consciousness as she realized what was happening to her children. The courtroom was silent. Emma wasn't seeking revenge. She was seeking truth. Justice. Closure. She wasn't just surviving. She was remembering, for the ones who couldn't speak. Christine didn't show remorse. She didn't break down. She sat upright, silent, almost amused. Her legal team argued that Emma's trauma had distorted her memory. That the human brain, especially post-coma, can misremember, misplace faces, misinterpret details. They questioned how Emma could be so sure. But Christine had no alibi. Her travel history, her digital footprint, and her known jealousy of Emma painted a vivid picture. When asked directly if she had visited Arboga, she hesitated. When confronted with hostile records, she shrugged. When asked why she was carrying two hammers, she said they were tools. But then, investigators found something chilling. A backpack, left behind on a train Christine had taken after the attack. Inside? A children's book. And scribbled on one of the pages, was the name of one of Emma's children. It wasn't just bizarre. It was intimate. Personal. Impossible to explain away. The defense had no answer for it. To prosecutors, it was a breadcrumb, one Christine didn't mean to leave behind. A ghost trail. A fingerprint of intent. Born in Germany, Christine had a past filled with isolation, disappointment, and abandonment. She had reportedly attempted suicide several times in her youth. Her relationships were short, intense, and obsessive. To psychologists, she was a textbook narcissist with obsessive traits. She didn't want love, she wanted control. When Nicholas left her, she didn't feel heartbreak. She felt insult. And when she learned Emma still had a connection to him, she didn't grieve. She plotted. Christine didn't see Emma's children as people. She saw them as Emma's extensions. And to punish Emma, she erased them. This wasn't just a crime of passion. This was symbolic annihilation. A dark psychological act of destroying someone by erasing what they love. On August 26, 2008, Christine Schürrer was found guilty of 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. She was sentenced to life in prison, without parole, a rare sentence for a woman in that country. But what is justice in a case like this? For Emma, it wasn't about punishment. It was about remembrance. She still wears a pendant with Max and Saga's initials. She speaks their names in interviews. And every year, on March 17th, she lights candles, not just to mourn, but to remind the world that they mattered. Christine never apologized. Never confessed. She appealed. She lost. She was eventually transferred to serve her sentence in Germany, under the condition that it remain a life term. But Emma's sentence? That never ends. She lost everything that day. And all she did was answer the door. After the verdict, the courtroom emptied, but the weight never lifted. Not for Emma. Christine Schürrer went behind bars. But Emma? She carried what couldn't be sentenced. The echoes of her children's laughter. The final look in Max's eyes. The silence that replaced a life. And yet, she moved forward. Emma eventually rebuilt her life. She stayed in Arboga. She chose love again. Her partner, Torgny Helberg, stood by her side in the years that followed. Through the grief. Through the press. Through the healing. Together, they have 2 more children. A new family, not a replacement, but a continuation. A reason to breathe. A reason to get out of bed. A reason to live. But if you ask Emma, she never forgets. Max and Saga's names are written into her life. Into every birthday cake, every lullaby, every quiet walk alone when the pain creeps back in. She didn't just survive Christine's rage. She lived to tell the world what evil looks like when it wears a polite smile. What do you do with a story like this? Do you file it away as just another crime from a different country? Or do you feel it, deep in your chest, as a reminder of how obsession, jealousy, and untreated delusion can turn into horror? Christine Schürrer wasn't insane. She was methodical. She didn't lash out in chaos. She planned it, calmly, completely. She believed she deserved someone else's life. And when she couldn't have it, she tried to burn it to the ground. 2 children paid the price. And their mother will carry their memory, forever. Have you ever heard of this case before today? If someone kills out of obsession, not impulse, should we call it mental illness? Or evil? Can a mother ever truly recover from this kind of loss? And if someone travels across borders just to kill, should that be treated as premeditation, or something even darker? Do you think Christine's family knew about her obsessive traits but chose to ignore it? Let us know in the comments. Sometimes evil doesn't wear a mask. It knocks. And waits for you to answer the door. If this story moved you, If you believe true crime should remember the victims, not just glorify the crime, subscribe to Behind Closed Doors. We tell these stories with the weight they deserve. This case may be closed, but the questions it raises, they remain wide open. Thank you for watching.